That's Mom. It's her going into the house.
She walks in. That was it.
A mom is missing. This beautiful blonde, very young and vivacious woman.
Everybody was starting to reach out, and nobody had heard from her.
I tried messaging her. I tried to call her on Messenger.
Police had to look at those facts and say she could just be off the grid right now.
We don't have a crime scene. We don't have an obvious crime.
There's no body. There's no murder weapon.
Right here, right here.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like he's dragging something. What the hell did you just watch?
Billings, Montana, 2018. The fiercely independent city on the edge of the Rocky Mountains is in the middle of an economic boom. It's here that 49-year-old Laura Johnson has come to experience her own independence after years of raising her children.
Yep. Yeah, that's probably the best picture of my mom. All I know is my mom got some 80s hair going on, and my dad actually has a full set of hair. Seeing all of us as an actual family, holy smokes.
Laura grew up in Vancouver, Washington, and met her future husband Howard there when she was 18.
By the time my mom was 23, she had 5 boys. She loved the fact that she was a mother. She always told us, I would never regret having all of you kids. She was extremely loving, and she was amazingly funny as well, and she gets that from her dad, who's just a jokester at every turn.
She was a wonderful mom, always helped with everything, always treated everybody like their family.
My dad worked the regular 9 to 5. Mom stayed at home, raised the kids. She was very nurturing.
She did everything. Every night she'd cook dinner. And for the amount of people that we had, I felt like it was a lot, but she made it look always easy, so.
She always made it a deal to have a good meal. Big old feast. My entire career has been in food service, and that's mostly due to the fact that I grew up cooking in the kitchen with my mom.
But in 2012, their children grown and out of the house, Laura and her husband Howard separate, and Laura moves to the Las Vegas, Nevada area.
I definitely think she wanted to find her own sense of happiness. You know, a woman in her 40s having that for the first time, that's got to be empowering, you know what I mean? So she did tell me that she had joined a dating app.
And it isn't long before Laura meets someone she really likes. His name is Greg Green.
Greg was one of the people who she was matched with. He worked in Vegas right there. They went out on a couple of dates, and then it went to the point where she was living with him in Nevada.
Although she now lives 1,000 miles away from her family in Vancouver, Washington, Laura keeps in regular touch with her sons.
My mom was never really good about keeping a cell phone. So our main points of communication were Facebook.
She was consistently on Facebook. Like, you can click on Messenger and her little thing would be green.
In July of 2018, Greg Green gets a job in Billings, Montana. Laura follows him there in August, and soon after, she lands a job at a Papa John's restaurant. After her first day at work, Laura calls her son, Stephen.
I remember the last time that I talked to her on the phone was when she was driving home. It was literally just, talk to each other, see how life's going, have some laughs. But it's not until you look back, you wish you did more with your time, you know?
On September 18th, 2018, Laura's sons become concerned that she's stopped communicating with them.
My older brother, Howard Jr., he spoke to my mom every day. He called me and said, "Hey, have you guys heard from Mom?" And I haven't heard from her. I looked on Facebook. It said that she hadn't been active for a couple days. So then I called Steven. I was like, "Hey, have you talked to Mom?"
Jonathan called me on the 18th. The fact that Jonathan had even called me in the first place was a huge red flag. Because if there was a way to get a hold of her, he totally could have, you know what I mean? But now he's at the point to where he's like, I need help. I called my mom, and every time the phone was straight to voicemail. I've tried messaging her, I've tried to call her on Messenger, I've tried to call a job, and the job is just like, yeah, she hasn't shown up for work since September 13th. Like all of this, and I'm coming up with nothing.
Nobody had heard from her.
I called Greg. He picked up. He says, came home from work on the 13th, and she was gone. All of her stuff's gone. All of it. I don't know anything. He doesn't know where she is.
September 24th, 2018. Laura's sons have been trying to reach her for 6 days.
So then I started calling the police department out there.
We asked the Billings, Montana Police Department to do welfare checks.
Officers went to Miss Johnson's residence to attempt to make contact and speak with her. The gate was locked. There was 2 large dogs in the yard. They weren't friendly. The house was quiet, and they weren't able to make any contact. Officers went to Miss Johnson's work and was advised that her last day of work was on the 13th, and she had not been to work since then.
Detectives tracked down her boyfriend, Greg.
When officers spoke with Gregory, he told them that on the 13th he had gone to work. And when he returned that day, he found that she was gone and she had packed her 2 red suitcases that she had brought with her and had left. The majority of people that contact police departments looking for their loved ones or wanting welfare checks done, those people are found eventually. You know, maybe they did go on a vacation and they didn't tell somebody. I think a lot of people, with the fast-paced life that we have, people want to take a break, they want to disconnect from life, and that can be something you have to take into consideration when looking for people.
What the law enforcement officers told me was, you are telling us that she's missing. We're not saying wrong, but we don't have enough information to say that you're right. The fact that it was a grown woman, people believe that if they aren't being found, it's because they don't want to be found. And anybody who knows my mom in this situation know that that's fundamentally not true. So the sense of like, something's happened became very real.
It's been 13 days since anyone has had any contact with Laura, and her family is getting anxious.
I posted a picture of my mom, and he said, "We have not heard from my mom." And just to explain the situation, a lot of people commented on there.
The post was getting a ton of shares. I thought that the whole thing was just strange. The fact that, her sons haven't heard from her. We don't know where she is. She hasn't showed up to her job yet. She's not responding to text messages. The first thing that I do when I see something like that is I do reach out to law enforcement.
September 27th of 2018, I did receive a call from one of the local reporters regarding a Facebook post involving Laura Johnson. So the next thing I did after I got off the phone was started to research the case. While we haven't reached the level that there was a crime committed, things were starting to fall in place that not everything was right.
Investigators find baffling clues in Laura's disappearance.
There was a recent phone ping from Washington that showed that the phone had been there on September 26th.
And learn of a troubling past.
She had a prior addiction, and she could just be off the grid right now.
I'm not just going to sit here. So the next logical step was to go to Montana.
September 27th, 2018. Laura Johnson's family has not heard from her in 2 weeks. Her boyfriend, Greg Green, tells police he hasn't seen her since September 13th, which was also the last day she was at work.
At this point, it's still unknown where she's at, unknown if there's foul play involved. We just had not gotten any information conclusive one way or the other.
Police ask Laura's son, Stephen, if there is anything going on in her life they should know about. Stephen tells them that years before, she was injured and that she became addicted to prescription painkillers. But at the time of her disappearance, she was getting treatment and doing well.
There was a feeling that potentially she may have relapsed due to her addiction.
Police had to look at those facts and say, well, she does have a history of use. She had a prior addiction, and she could just be off the grid right now.
Detectives reach out to the clinic where Laura has been going for treatment.
The clinic advised me that she had been there every single day for 3 weeks prior to the 13th.
If Laura has relapsed, detectives know she could be in hiding somewhere. They go back to Greg Green, hoping he can help focus the search. But he doesn't have anything to add to his previous statement that Laura had moved out on September 13th, and he hasn't seen her since.
He was quite cooperative. He consented to a search of his home. Officers didn't locate any items that they thought were suspicious at that time. And Gregory had allowed them to look through his phone, which he showed them some messages that he had sent to Laura after she had left.
We don't have an obvious crime. We just know that she's been missing.
Investigators subpoena Laura's phone records, and when the data comes in, there's a glimmer of hope that Laura is alive and well.
There was a recent phone ping from Washington that showed that the phone had been there on September 26th.
Detectives wonder if Laura went back to her hometown of Vancouver, Washington, where her sons and ex-husband live.
From an investigative standpoint, it made sense because that's where some of her support network would be.
Sergeant Billings called and said, I got some great news for you. I was like, oh, she did show up in town. I got excited.
Laura's sons immediately start searching all over Vancouver for her.
Me and my wife drove around for 2 hours to every business that was open, showing pictures of my mom, asking if anybody had seen her. So I was like, if she's in town, she's obviously would be at one of the hotels for sure. None of the hotels are like, nope, haven't seen her. Nobody's seen her. Not a single person.
Laura's sons are disappointed that there is no sign of her. Then they get disturbing news. The investigators made a mistake when tracking Laura's phone.
When they pinged my mom's phone, they pinged the last incoming call, and it was my dad. And it was on his birthday, because he spoke to my mom every year on his birthday. He knew everything that was going on, and he's like, well, it's my birthday, so hopefully she answers.
Laura never answered that call, and detectives realized that she was never in Vancouver. been 18 days since Laura Johnson disappeared, and her son Stephen decides he has to take action.
And being all the way in Washington and realizing that I wasn't going to get an answer, that was the next logical step, was to go to Montana. I was like, I'm not just going to sit here.
I couldn't let him go alone.
They said to themselves, we're going to just get in the car and we're going to drive 14 hours over to Billings and we're just going to go look for her ourselves.
So the first place that we went was the police station. And what they tell us is, as long as I didn't break the law, I could do anything. I had inclinations about who the person Greg was, and none of that ever sat right with me.
Stephen calls Greg, looking for more details about the last time he saw his mother.
He picked up, it was him. You know, who are you? What is this? Hangs up the phone. So I went to his house. I was yelling my mom's name. I'm yelling Laura. I'm yelling Mom. I think that she's in there. And then that's when he lets the dogs out. So I go up to the dogs, and they're loud, but they're not dangerous at all. So I just bent down and started petting the dog, you know. And that's when he came out of the trailer and lights a cigarette, and he's, you know, can I help you? And I tell him, I was like, I'm Stephen Johnson. Like, Laura's my mother. I believe you know where she is, and I would like you to tell me. And he's like, no, I came home, and she was gone. He's very cocky. He's just standing there smoking his cigarette. So I told him, I believe you know where my mother is. I will be the one to put you behind bars, and I'll be the end of you. So he tells me to leave, and he calls the cops on me.
October 1st, 2018. Stephen Johnson has driven from his home in Vancouver, Washington to Billings, Montana to try to find his missing mother, Laura. After a disturbing encounter with Laura's boyfriend, Greg Green, Stephen's next step is to create flyers and post them all over Billings.
When we went anywhere, we handed these out. So we went to Greg's work, and we put them all over his window at work, and then he tore them all off.
We were like texting, we're like, all right, has anybody heard? Like, we want to know, like, what's going on?
We woke up 8 o'clock every single morning with a place to go to, an idea in mind, with somebody to talk to just try to find something. So at the end of every day, I'm calling my brothers, telling them, here's what we did. Here's who we talked to.
It was very frustrating because this is like what you see on TV. I never thought in my life I would ever go through it.
One of the hardest things for me was dealing with the frustrations with the family, understanding their concerns, understanding their desire to have, swift justice.
We can't just go to Mr. Green's residence and knock the door in and do a search without a warrant. We've got proper legal procedure. And at that time, we were lacking enough information to use the search warrant process in order to further develop Ms. Johnson's case.
It was frustrating not being able to get a real reaction. So it just felt like our duty to prove it.
We've talked to everybody who we can. We've been to the doctor's office. We've been to the Salvation Army. Everything comes up empty. We had gone through every single dead end. We had been through all of Greg's neighbors with no answer, with no solution. We were nowhere closer on day 5 than we were on day 1. And the last thing before we leave town that we figure we can do is go knock on the neighbors' houses again.
As they are knocking on the door of the neighbor across the street from Greg, Stephen sees something he hadn't noticed before.
I basically stopped and I said, "Hey, I think we found something. There is a camera at the one place that we're interested in."
It points right at the driveway of where Greg and Laura lived.
Stephen and Casey had talked to the owner a few days before. Now, they ring his doorbell again, hoping to get access to the footage.
And the first thing he says is, "Do you want to see?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "I have my camera footage pulled up because you were asking me about your mom." He invites me in, and for the next 35 minutes, I'm just on his floor looking at a bunch of video. So the first thing we pull up is September 13th, the last day she went to work. And then Casey's recording it on her phone. You could speed it up. So we're going through. So we're watching the camera footage. And then this is where it gets very interesting. It's him. Right here.
Keep playing.
What happens is Greg gets home first. Greg gets home and parks his truck and goes inside. And 35 minutes later, right here. Oh! My mom gets home. Right there. So, that's mom.
Blonde hair.
It is 7:07 on September 13th.
God looks excited
That's
to
her.
see her.
It's her going into the house. We were told time and time again that Greg's story is, I came home and she was gone. I came home and she was gone. She had taken all of her stuff and it was gone. So we got him. He was lying. But, well, where is she? So we're watching the footage. Day turns to night.
What time is it?
Right now,
11:27? 10:27?
10:27.
There he is. The headlamp?
Headlamp on. We see Greg throughout the entire night. Right here.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like he's dragging something. Back. Just moving. Going back and forth between the house.
That's when we call the detectives, like, you need to come see this.
Stephen Johnson has discovered home security footage of his missing mother, Laura. It shows her at the house she shared with Greg Green after the time Greg told police she had left. Realizing the importance of the discovery, he calls the police.
Approximately 10:45 that night, I go to that neighbor's house and we watch the footage in question. We then start viewing the video in greater detail. And it was definitely very concerning.
The detective's trained eye spots something that Stephen and Casey missed.
The footage shows the area of the driveway where Laura Johnson is observed coming home that evening, and she's exiting the vehicle and walking toward the trailer. Gregory, he's also seen going back into the garage and coming out with 2 red-colored suitcases in that vehicle as well.
The same 2 red suitcases that Greg told officers that Laura had taken with her when she moved out. And then, the detective sees something that changes the investigation from a missing persons case to something much more disturbing.
And you can see him walking out with that large, heavy object. That's zoomed in to show that area of the vehicle where he puts what we believe is Laura's body into the vehicle. And then ultimately he's observed putting a shovel in the back of the pickup bed before he leaves that evening just after 7 p.m. We believe that more than likely that is her body, but we need a lot more evidence to prove that at this point. That was kind of a gut-wrenching feeling to know that you just observed somebody's last moments.
What the hell did we just watch? The only logical answer is, Greg ended my mother's life that night. And finally dawns on me, after all of this, that I'll probably never get to see my mom again. Is that I'll never get another goodbye. I'll never get that closure. I'll never get the last I love you. I'll never get any of it. It's just gone.
But unless police can prove that it is Laura's body on the video, they don't have a crime. On October 5th, 3 weeks since Laura was last seen, Billings police asked Greg to come into the station for questioning.
Gregory told us what he had initially told officers. He told us that on the 13th, when he got home that evening, she was gone and her 2 red suitcases were gone.
In that video, it shows Greg pulling those suitcases out of the house and packing them up in his truck.
He seemed very surprised when we told him that there was video, and then he decided that he didn't want to talk to us anymore. We informed him that he was not going to be allowed to go back to his home. We believed that that was a crime scene at this point. The vehicle he drove to the police department was impounded at that point.
We have now crossed into full-on criminal investigation. We do believe a crime has committed.
We had probable cause at that point to seek a search warrant for his residence. But we didn't have enough information to that point to make an arrest. We executed that search warrant that evening and began to process the trailer where Gregory and Laura lived. One of the first things that we noted was the strong odor of new carpet smell. In the back room of Gregory's home, it was obvious that the carpet had been replaced very recently, and that was suspicious to us.
But because police find no proof that Laura is dead, they have to release Greg.
At this point, we still don't have a body. We still haven't located Miss Johnson. There was not enough to arrest Mr. Green for the disappearance of Miss Johnson.
It's a crushing blow to the family.
After them basically telling him, hey, we know you're lying, they let him go.
The entire family was, really upset. Because you have all this video, but you don't arrest him. Why?
There's a lot of frustration, but I would say it was mainly based around, this guy did all of this, and we could just see right through him.
We work closely with the county attorney's office and trying to determine, what more we need to get to that point to make an arrest. I had to remain focused on what needed to be done to build a case against him.
While the forensics team examines Greg's seized work truck, detectives have a strategy to keep an eye on Greg.
One of the last things we did when we searched the residence is we placed a tracker on his vehicle. We believe that he did more than likely take Laura's body to some location to bury her. We placed the tracker on with the hope of he might go back out to the location.
The tracker is placed on Greg's personal car, the same one that Laura is seen driving on surveillance video on September 13th. On October 5th, hours after his interview with detectives, Greg Green starts to move.
And at approximately 10 p.m. that evening, his vehicle started to move towards the interstate, heading west outside of Billings. So we began to follow him. He drove straight through the night, and we realized that he was leaving the state.
October 5th, 2018. Greg Green is the prime suspect in the presumed murder of Laura Johnson. Lacking evidence of a crime, detectives have to let Greg walk free. But they have placed a tracker on his car, and he appears to be leaving Billings, Montana, in a hurry.
His vehicle started to move towards the interstate and heading west outside of Billings.
Detectives track Greg as he drives for 16 hours across 5 states to his old hometown in Henderson, Nevada.
If you're being interviewed by police about the whereabouts of your ex-girlfriend and you just hightail it out of town, it's not a good look.
We were coordinating with law enforcement where he was at. They knew that we were tracking him. They would do drive-bys, make sure that we knew his whereabouts.
Meanwhile, Billings police continue the search for evidence to arrest Greg. Using his cell phone data, they track Greg's movements during the night of September 13th, which leads them to the local Walmart.
We were able to locate footage of him going to Walmart that evening. And when he went through the self-checkout, we did see a very distinct abrasion on his face, which we thought was very suspicious at that point.
Then, another crucial piece of evidence emerges from the forensic search of Greg's impounded work truck.
I noticed that the vehicle was very clean. It had been washed recently. So after 2 days processing that vehicle for biological material, taking swabs from various locations on the seat, we found 3 very, very small 1 to 2 millimeter stains that appeared to be blood.
That evidence came back from the crime lab, and sure enough, it was Laura's blood.
The totality of all of the evidence that we had located, including the blood on the door of that truck, and together with video footage showing him carrying out what we believed was Laura's body, at that point there was enough evidence to arrest him.
Hey, Greg. I remember you. You remember us? All right. So you know why we're here? I imagine so, yes. Okay. So, something changed or something like this, or? Well, we have a warrant for your arrest for deliberate homicide, so that's what's changed. That's why you're here in handcuffs. Okay. And you'll be expected back to Billings. Huh. For deliberate homicide. Deliberate homicide. Deliberate homicide. Did you want to tell us what happened with her when she came home that night? And
what you did with her, that's your decision. I'm not going to press you. That's what I want to know.
I did everything that I know already.
Okay, well, we both know that's not true. So if you don't want to talk to me, we'll end that there. Okay?
After being held for 7 months in a Nevada jail, Greg is extradited to Billings. More than a year later, in February 2020, his trial is set to begin. But without Laura Johnson's body, a conviction is far from a sure thing.
We had a theory of what we believed happened, but we just didn't have a body. This is the very first case that I've ever had that involves a no-body homicide arrest. When you're trying to convict somebody of deliberate homicide and you don't have a body to go along with that, it can be very stressful.
What is your evidence? Can you really make it stick?
Drugs, surveillance video, and murder. Testimony begins in the trial of a Billings man accused of killing Laura Johnson.
We sat right behind him the entire time. I was not happy at all.
He was not taking anything seriously. I don't know if he was just in disbelief, like this is really happening, so he just kind of like went numb to it.
He maintained his innocence the entire time, even though there was video being played in the courtroom of him carrying what appeared to be Laura's body out of his house.
The evidence in this case will show you that the defendant took great lengths to cover up his murder of his girlfriend, Laura.
Prosecutors present jurors with a possible motive for the brutal murder. Laura was about to permanently end her rocky relationship with Greg.
One of the things we did learn from the trial was she had moved into a separate bedroom and she was saving money to try to leave.
He acted like he was at home sitting on his couch. And yeah, he didn't care whatsoever. He thought he was like at home watching Netflix or something.
He knew exactly where the cameras were from news media. There was a moment where he turned around, looked into the lens of our camera, and gave a little smile.
Greg's behavior at the trial only adds to the heartbreak felt by Laura's family.
That if this situation didn't happen, like I could have had my mom back. She would have been living in my town. She would have been. She would have been here. It's not fair.
How will this trial pan out without evidence of Laura Johnson's body?
This case has had so many unanswered questions. It's had so much heartache with it. And there's no body, there's no murder weapon, there's no evidence that shows he actually killed her.
Two years after Laura Johnson's final moments were captured by a home security camera, a jury in Billings, Montana is set to decide whether her boyfriend, Greg Green, is guilty of murder.
This trial lasted, 2 weeks? Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. Didn't leave that city hall building for 2 weeks, basically.
That footage was the critical piece in the investigation and in the trial. It was a piece of evidence that the jury actually got to take back with them to deliberations, to view.
You can't escape the silent witness. You can't escape that video surveillance.
Any person with common sense to see all the evidence, and especially the video, would know he was guilty. I just got home the day before, and Steven called and said, hey, they have a verdict already. We're headed back.
The jury was out maybe 2 hours.
You don't know. put 12 people in a room to make a decision and hope it's the right one.
To the charge of deliberate homicide. Guilty.
Ultimately, he was convicted of deliberate homicide. And he received a sentence of 100 years in the Montana State Prison.
In my 16-year career, this is the first case I've been involved in that went from a welfare check to a missing persons to a homicide without a body to a even prosecution of a homicide without a body.
And the fact that the contribution that we had was as impactful as it was, that's where the bittersweet part comes, you know? Had to extend ourselves that much.
Go through something you could never prepare yourself for.
Exactly.
If he didn't do that, then we would still be searching.
One of the key pivotal moments here was the persistence from family. And then Ms. Johnson's son coming to Billings and locating the surveillance footage. And I can only speculate, if that video had not been located or recovered, I'm not sure where we would be now.
Today, Stephen and his brothers are focused on keeping their mother's memory alive.
My mom was a part of my life every single day. I got married last year to my beautiful wife, Casey here. We had our daughter, Eliza, and Eliza's middle name is my mother's name. So her name is Eliza Laura Johnson. Big part of how my mom was as an everyday mother is the ways that I've been able to cope with her loss. So making the meals that she made, having the family dinners, you know, bringing her into my life in those little ways to keep her alive. That's what I do. She's there every time I make dinner, you know.
The only thing I have that I can hear her voice now is April 2018. She called me, but I was at work, and she left me a voicemail to tell me happy birthday. That's the only thing I have to hear her voice.
We still have the fact that we don't know where my mother lies to this day. That we have not been able to bring her home. We haven't had the sense of closure for peace. There's been no funeral, there's been no memorial, there's been nothing. If there's anything that anybody can tell us, if there's anything that sticks out, if there's a piece of property you own, if there's something you can do, if there's something you've seen, just, you know, to please come forward.
I'm hoping this outcome that people come forward with actual real information and it helps us find her and bring her home.
She missed the bus just by seconds. All of a sudden, she disappears.
She harbored this hope to continue her doctoral studies in the US, but then going back to China to be a leader in her discipline of environmental engineering.
Maybe this is a situation where she was kidnapped, or she's just confused, something happened to her medically.
There was almost an exact 1 minute conversation between the driver of this vehicle and Ying Ying.
I'd like you to be more forthcoming with me because I need to find where she lives.
It's just a whole bit. How those people want her home safe. You know what happened. Should we?
June 2017. 26-year-old Yingying Zhang is boldly following her dreams. She's a visiting scholar from China at the University of Illinois, conducting research on crop production.
Yingying got here in April of 2017. I've got a picture of Mom, Dad, and Yingying at the train station when she got on the train at home to leave to come to Illinois. She was really, really interested in crop production and improving methods of crop production back in China. She's in her early 20s. She's at school. She's learning. She's happy.
Before coming to America, Yingying grew up over 7,000 miles away in southeastern China. She's the oldest child in a close-knit family of 4.
Going to college, moving from 3 hours away from home was a lot. I can't imagine what it's like to move from a different country, trying to navigate life that way. I know that she did miss her family. She would call them often, and I know that they missed her a lot too.
She loved to sing, and she was part of a band called Cute Horse. She is someone who is genuinely very, very kind. She has a certain innocence to her. She was very close to her parents, especially to her mother.
Rangao is the father. He is a truck driver back in China. Li Fang is the mom, and she was in poor health and very fragile. Life was a struggle for them. Yingying was a dutiful daughter who performed many of the functions within the household.
Coming from families with limited means, academic excellence was seen as the only way out. She did her master's degree at Peking University's graduate school, where she studied environmental engineering. Afterwards, she received a researcher position at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Her monthly salary was 4,000 yuan, which would probably be about $700, and she would use that to supplement her family's income.
Now in 2017, Yingying accepts a 1-year research position as a visiting scholar at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign.
Champaign-Urbana is a modest-sized community, small town in a lot of ways. The students travel all around town, ride bicycles. It's very pastoral. And there are a significant number of students, undergrad and graduate, from China.
Being able to go to another country, especially the United States, to pursue further studies, especially trained as a scientist, is an affirmation of personal excellence.
On June 9th, 2017, 2 months after she arrives in the United States, Yingying schedules a 2 p.m. appointment to tour a new apartment.
Yingying was excited to be moving, and she was meeting one of the leasing agents to tour it and potentially sign.
She has the opportunity to move to a new apartment in North Urbana, which is north of campus. And so she has to take the bus to get down to Central Campus, and she has to get off that bus and catch another bus that's going to take her north on Lincoln out of campus, where it's student housing. There's a significant number of students.
5 hours later, at 7 p.m. that night, Yingying is supposed to meet a group of her lab mates for their regularly scheduled meeting. She never arrives. They call and text, but no one can reach her.
Yingying was always on time, so her lab mates thought that it was really weird that she didn't show up, because Yingying would never not show up to anything without notice.
I was the head of the department Yingying was associated with. I was at the movies with both my sons, and I got out and I got a text from the leader of the lab group saying I have a student that's missing, and then I gave that person a call, and I just said, have you called the police?
At 9:24 p.m., Ying Ying's lab mates report her missing to the University Police Department.
This was unusual. I've never had anything like that happen with a student gone missing. We were concerned about her. We wanted to know what was going on.
University police officers check her apartment. She's not there. But they find cash, important documents, and belongings, which tells them she didn't go far. While searching her apartment, officers locate her diary. They skim through its pages for clues to her whereabouts.
One of the last things that she had written in it was, "Life is too short to be ordinary." I think about that almost like weekly, if not daily. It just really shows how she wanted to continue living her life. I think it's just a really heavy thing to hear, especially it being the last entry there.
That evening, University of Illinois police make a difficult phone call to Ying Ying's family in China.
The thought of Ying Ying leaving China and coming to the United States had to be scary to the family. Then to have this happen, they were devastated.
I think the best word I could use to describe what they were feeling was horrified.
On June 10th, the day after Ying Ying was last seen, University police begin working the case as a missing persons investigation.
The University Police Department went to all the hangout places where students congregated. They searched tirelessly over that weekend for Ying Ying.
I worked at the school newspaper, the Daily Illini. I think this was such a big case, and I was just interested in it in that way as a student journalist, both of us being new to the university. It just struck me on a personal level.
The city of Champaign, it's a smaller city. There was such a tremendous outpouring of support of Ying Ying's family to find Ying Ying.
Missing posters for Ying Ying were posted on every corner. People who were on campus were basically surrounded by these posters, and her picture was everywhere.
I was on the faculty at the University of Illinois College of Law. I had a graduate course where I would teach international students the American trial system. It was devastating to us. The thought that something like this could happen on our campus with one of our students, this is crazy. This is crazy.
The search for Ying Ying intensifies.
We received a lot of surveillance footage, and we were able to trace Ying Ying's entire route.
The investigation takes a dark turn.
Another university student said she was approached by a strange individual who presented himself as an undercover police officer and wanted her to get into the car.
And a community fears the worst.
Once it's clear that she got in that car, now it's kidnapping.
Monday, June 12th, 2 days after Ying Ying Zhang was last seen at the University of Illinois, word spreads of her disappearance, shaking the quiet college community.
Police were all around looking for her, and students who were still on campus were extremely scared.
That fear increases as more details of the investigation become known. University police reveal that a check of Ying Ying's cell phone records show the last text she sent was on the afternoon of June 9th to the leasing agent for her new apartment.
At 1:39 p.m., Ying Ying sends a text saying she would be about 30 minutes late, and she ends up never showing up. At 2:38 p.m., he checks in again, seeing where she's at, but there's no answer. There's no more text between them, And the last communication anybody had with Ying Ying was with that leasing agent.
All of a sudden, the communication stops. She's just gone.
3 days into the search, university police reach out to the FBI for help.
They had been working almost nonstop for the last several days and were, in some ways, exhausted, and in other ways, just kind of needing some more resources. So when they called, our entire office showed up to help them with what they had on their hands.
The first move for FBI agents is to retrace Ying Ying's steps. They know on the day she went missing, she had an appointment to tour an apartment north of campus. Based on her cell data, they also know she took the bus.
She's going to come to main campus on a bus because she doesn't have a car. She's going to use public transportation.
We received a lot of surveillance footage from the metro system. The buses had a lot of cameras. And from those cameras, we were actually able to trace Ying Ying's entire route.
Federal agents scanned through the mountain of digital footage from June 9th, the day Ying Ying went missing. They get their first glimpse of her when they identify Ying Ying boarding a bus at 1:35 p.m.
You see Ying Ying get on the bus from her apartment. She smiles at the bus driver as she shows her bus ticket.
The surveillance video shows Ying Ying exiting the bus 17 minutes later at 1:52 p.m. Then she walks down the street toward another stop to transfer to another bus.
The security camera that caught Ying Ying, you can see Ying Ying trying to catch the next bus. I think she missed it by a few seconds. And then you can kind of see her in the footage, sort of like giving up and letting the bus go and probably trying to figure out what to do next.
Investigators scour these images of Ying Ying for any clues, and they see something that piques their interest. As Ying Ying waits for another bus, a black 4-door vehicle drives up to her and stops.
There was almost an exact 1-minute conversation between the driver of this vehicle and Ying Ying, after which she gets into the passenger seat and that vehicle proceeds to travel off camera.
Once it's clear that she got in that car, now it's a potential kidnapping.
With the case now potentially a kidnapping, concern about Ying Ying's safety grows. Using the extensive surveillance camera system in the university area, FBI analysts determined the vehicle is a black 4-door Saturn Astra sedan.
It had only been manufactured for a very short period of time. It was identifiable.
But they can't read the license plate.
Everyone within the FBI and the University Police Department was trying desperately to identify the license plate on that vehicle or some other mark that can make it highly identifiable so that way we could find it. The vehicle proceeds off of the university grounds, off of their campuses, and goes into a more residential area, and we lose a lot of the surveillance at that point.
Then a report comes in about a concerning incident on campus. On the same day, Ying Ying disappeared.
The University Police Department actually received a call from another university student, Emily Hogan, who said she was approached by a strange individual in a black vehicle on the 9th. We called her that night, and she came in and spoke with us and told us all about her experience. She said this individual presented himself as an undercover police officer and wanted her to get into the car. She declined and immediately called the police.
The FBI believes it could be the same car Ying Ying is seen getting into.
I think Ying Ying was understandably really stressed with everything that was going on and was put in that situation on a seemingly safe campus, so it makes sense that she would have trusted him and gotten into the car.
We didn't know whether other people were at risk or not, whether that person could be out there, that it might happen again.
Four days after Ying Zhang vanishes from the University of Illinois campus, the FBI is searching for the black car she's seen entering on surveillance video. Agents believe the same Saturn Astra approached another young woman earlier on the day Ying disappeared, and the driver tried to coerce her into the vehicle.
They turned to automobile registration records for Champaign County and the surrounding counties.
Agents discover there are only 9 four-door Saturn Astras registered in Champaign County.
On the 12th, our canvas teams went in and attempted to make contact with every owner of a Saturn Astra.
Investigators track down and clear all 9 potential suspects, one by one.
There's nothing specific at that moment that would have raised any additional suspicion.
Hoping to find something that can help focus their search, something they might have missed earlier, investigators return to the surveillance footage. Finally, something catches their eye.
Somebody noticed that the hubcap was cracked. It had a piece missing. And in zooming in, you could also see the vehicle had a sunroof.
One of the FBI agents who spoke to the Astra owners in Champaign County recalls seeing only one Astra that had a sunroof. He cross-references his list. It belongs to 27-year-old Brent Christensen.
Brent Christensen was a grad student in the physics department, the TA. He was teaching other students and earning his own degree at the same time. Generally pretty quiet and kept to himself.
Agents review the statement Brent Christensen made when they first asked him about the day Ying went missing.
He said he was home that day, was sleeping, his wife was out of town, he was playing video games, and there was nothing suspicious at that time that would put any more attention on him.
Officers go back out to the apartment where Christensen lives, and the car is parked in the parking lot.
They looked at that hubcap, and it had the exact same rake. The exact damage that was in that surveillance footage.
Investigators believe they've found the car seen with Ying in the surveillance video. It's a major discovery, but they want to confirm it was Brent Christensen behind the wheel before they confront him. They reach out to Emily Hogan, the woman who reported that a man in a black car approached her the same day Ying was abducted.
We presented her with a lineup of individuals. She went through those pictures and immediately identified Christensen as the person who was driving that vehicle on that morning. Emily Hogan's experience, her identification of Christensen, showed that he was in some ways hunting to try to find a victim. Based on the information we had, we were very confident that Christensen had in fact kidnapped Ying.
Armed with Emily's positive ID of Brent Christensen, Agent Manganaro races to his house and brings him in for questioning.
Why do you think that we brought you up here?
Because the car I own was seen picking up a girl that's missing. Yeah.
You originally told the agents that came to your apartment that you just played video games all day long. And you had to leave the apartment.
Yep.
But it's fair to say that we know that that's not true, correct?
Why would I lie?
I work in the Detectives Bureau with the U of I, and you know what we have access to? Cameras. Do you think that we're not going to track a vehicle all over campus? I know that you picked her up. I know you did.
I guess something.
Okay.
I go around them Saturday. I just pick a girl up.
Okay.
I saw her picture. I don't think it was her though.
Do you remember the girl's name that you picked up?
No, she was talking to your girl in English.
What was her ethnicity? You said she had trouble speaking English. Well, she was
Asian.
She was Asian.
Okay. I was just driving around. I saw a girl, and she was very distressed.
Okay.
So I stopped the car and looked at her. And asked her if she needed help. Talked to her for a little bit. Which I did very short. I apparently took the wrong turn compared to what she said, and that was enough to spook her. I'm not going to keep someone that barely won my car who just put me in there. So we're up. That was the last I saw her.
Really?
My impression of Christensen was that he was capable of manipulation. We knew that something terrible had happened, and there was a lot of pressure. We were operating under the hope that she was still alive, maybe being held against her will by Christensen at an unknown location.
My theory is that she didn't get out of the car. It was being often with him. My theory is she was in there a little bit longer. I'd like you to be more forthcoming with me because, again, I need to find where she is. I'd like you to be more forthcoming with me because, again, I need to find where she is.
6 days after the disappearance of Yingying Zhang, Brent Christensen admits to giving her a ride on June 9th, but insists he dropped her off and hasn't seen her since.
I don't know, so sorry.
Investigators put their suspect on a 24-hour investigative hold.
I immediately set out to write a search warrant and met the magistrate judge that night while other agents were keeping an eye on the vehicle, and got that search warrant signed to go seize it.
FBI agents inspect Brent's Saturn Astra, but they find no physical evidence linking Yingying to the vehicle. The FBI is confident they have the right man, but they can't hold him without evidence.
They decide to release him and keep track of him, put him under surveillance.
We had 24-hour surveillance on him, GPS trackers on the car. We had aerial assets circling above, hoping that he might lead us to where she was at or give us some clue of a location to search.
It was a really scary time. The investigation was ongoing and nobody really knew what had happened to Ying Yang. This was genuinely a really scary experience for the whole college community.
FBI surveillance teams continue tracking Brent Christensen for several days, but without any luck.
At that same time, some of the other agents met with his wife and had a voluntary interview with her at her residence.
Investigators learn their marriage is anything but ordinary.
Christensen and his wife had an open relationship. They each had another girlfriend or boyfriend on the side.
Brent met his girlfriend, Tara Bullis, on a dating site in 2017.
Christensen and Tara were involved in like a domineering, submissive type relationship. From Tara's perspective, it was mutual and she still maintained a great deal of control. When we went and talked to Tara, she was very open about their relationship, was very concerned about the missing student, Ying Yang, and agreed to help us find out what was going on and if Christensen had any involvement. So Tara agreed to wear a wire for us and record the conversations that she had with him. In all of these scenarios, it can be a risk. We don't know if the person we're asking to help us is going to turn around and then tell Christensen everything that we just talked to them about. We don't know. But in this instance, we really needed to find Ying Yang, and so that risk was very worth it.
You have agents watching him, you have agents watching her. And, the risky thing, I think, for the FBI is that if he discovers that wire, he could harm her.
While this was going on, we also had massive efforts underway searching fields, searching dumpsters, searching parks, looking for anything that might give some sort of indication as to where Ying Yang was.
The family has this hope. They want her to be alive. And so if you have that hope, then she's going to be alive. In your own thinking, she's going to be alive. And so the Chinese community, the family, and the local community are going to have a march in support of the search for Ying Yang.
Let's find Ying Yang! Let's find Ying Yang! Let's find Ying Yang! Let's find...
The March for Ying Yang brought a lot of people in the community together and out to kind of commemorate her. And it was really emotional.
Let's find Ying Yang! Let's find Ying Yang!
The March for Ying Yang takes place on the University of Illinois campus on June 29th, 20 days after she was last seen.
Let's find Ying Yang! Let's find Ying Yang!
Brent Christensen decides he's going to participate in that march.
Christensen ordered Tara to attend that event with him. She agreed, and as she had done in her past interactions with him, wore a wire to that event.
It's 6:46 on Thursday, June 29th. We're at the benefit for the walk, so I'm thinking I'm just going to turn this on right now so that it's on while we walk.
At the event, Christensen started making disclosures to her that if the people at the event knew who he was and what he had done, they would flee in terror.
It's just strange. It's just the whole thing. All those people there nice. I wanted them safe, and you have no idea what happened. Nobody know what happened.
Nobody will know what happened. And nobody will know what happened.
Not even you. Like, I'm the only one.
Let's find Ying Ying. Let's find Ying Ying. Let's find Ying Ying.
June 29th, 2017. 20 days into the search for missing college student Ying Ying Zhang, students at the University of Illinois hold a march to support her. The marchers include Brent Christensen, the prime suspect in her disappearance. He doesn't know his girlfriend is wearing a wire for the FBI.
I'm assuming people were here. So for me.
Our church. You feel you let nobody know?
I know a lot.
Huh?
I know a lot.
They're walking through Champaign, and he proceeds to tell her how he kidnapped Ying Ying, how he caused her a great deal of physical harm, how he assaulted her, bound her.
She was telling. She looks.
She would.
What?
She fight.
She just deal with it. Resilient. I tried to choke her. She didn't. She stuck on her back. She died. She was. Couldn't believe it. Like, she's back. Unbelievable. Like, supernatural almost how she used to.
I know Tara was very fearful throughout this entire exchange, and you can actually hear in that captured recording her heartbeat.
I choked her for 10 minutes. I released her breath. I couldn't believe it. Wow. So I carried her into my bathroom. Cut the fat. And I hit her on the head as hard as I could. And it broke her head open.
It was, in a lot of ways, a powerful moment for all of us. We knew that Christensen had kidnapped Ying Ying. We knew that something terrible had happened. And now we have him describing it.
Well, first, she did or not, so I got a knife. I couldn't go back and she grabbed the force.
Christensen was capable of immense violence, and he had a lot of pride in what he had done.
We got away with it.
We had all been working so tirelessly over the last several weeks, the entire team, to get to this moment. We had enough to make an arrest.
On June 30th, 2017, the FBI arrests and charges Brent Christensen for Ying Ying Zhang's death.
It was a relief to make an arrest, to put Christensen in jail, but we still didn't have Ying Ying, and that was our goal. We wanted to find where she was.
When the charges are brought against Christensen, there's announced he's arrested. That's a shock. The family is hoping that he has hidden her away somewhere. It was tough. It took them a while to accept the fact that she was really dead.
Christensen's arrest brought a lot of relief to myself and the rest of the college campus. It was also really confusing of just how could somebody that I thought was teaching me something do something so horrible.
Law enforcement has every reason to believe Ying Ying is dead. They need to find her body, but Brent Christensen is keeping his secret.
He declined a second interview, so our work wasn't done. And we continued to search the area and tried to find some sort of evidence as to where she was.
Police execute a search warrant at Brent's apartment. Although there's no sign of Ying Ying, they do find evidence of an assault.
We find bloodstains on the mattress. We found evidence that blood had gotten up against the wall behind the mattress and had seeped down into the carpet. And then we find that the bathroom had been tremendously clean. We discovered Christensen had put in a work order to his apartment complex a couple days after he killed Ying Ying for the grout and the tub in the bathroom to be redone.
Investigators also locate what they believe is the bat Brent used to beat Ying Ying. They send the bat and blood samples to the forensics lab for testing.
The crime scene evidence absolutely confirmed the admissions that he made during the parade was true.
Investigators also dig into Brent Christensen's social media, where they find more disturbing information about their suspect.
He had some posts on different websites that discuss fetishes. There was one in particular that we found very concerning. It described kidnapping someone, putting them in a duffel bag, proceeding to have a sexual encounter. What was particularly disturbing was when you compared it to the Amazon purchase records of Christensen. We found a purchase of a very large green duffel bag that could easily fit a person inside it. And the realization that she was likely put into a bag just like this and carried against her will into the apartment, it hits you. It makes it real. "21 days after Ying Ying Zhang goes missing, investigators have built a solid case against Brent Christensen. But they still don't have a body.
The family, there's certainly anger. There's always anger. To think that this man, in any form of brutal way, kidnapped and killed your daughter, it's beyond your ability as a human being to fathom. So the family's position was that he should receive the death penalty.
Although they know that not having a body will make it more difficult to win a conviction, prosecutors move forward with plans for the trial. On June 24, 2019, after a 2-day trial, a federal jury finds Brent Christensen guilty of kidnapping resulting in a death. Next, the jury deliberates on his sentencing.
Of the 12 jurors, 10 voted for the death penalty, 2 didn't. And so because a unanimous verdict was not reached, her killer was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I couldn't even say how I felt. I was happy that there was a verdict and that he would go away for the rest of his life. I thought it was going to feel like the ending of a story, but it didn't really feel like there was that closure that you would get. When the verdict was initially read, emotions were really high. I don't think Ying Ying's family felt as though justice was served, as they were really adamant about wanting the death penalty, but instead Christensen got life in prison.
At the conclusion of the trial, the court gave authorization for me to take Ying Ying's journal from evidence and replace it with a copy, and I was able to give that journal to Ying Ying's mom.
It's all Ying Ying's family has of her, because Brent Christensen refuses to say what he did with her body after killing her.
He personally has never told the FBI, but he's told his attorneys what he did. And they tell us, because the trial's over, so immunity's gone, nothing else can happen, they tell us that he had dismembered the body, put her remains in the dumpster outside of the apartment building, was taken to a landfill. The area in the landfill was probably half a football field. So the likelihood of recovering her body is virtually nil.
I'm not sure if there will ever be closure for the family in that Ying Ying was never found.
Parents' worst nightmare is losing a child. Just think about her and how excited she was when she came here. I got kids, I got kids in graduate school, and I think about that. And, it's just, life's not fair. Bad things happen to good people, and this is a case of that.
Ying Ying's loved ones returned to China without their daughter. To honor her memory, they establish a memorial fund at the university, where the student body is forever touched by Ying Ying's final words.
Her diary entries were her conversations with herself. The last line is, life is too short to be ordinary. This kind of thinking that one makes something out of one's ordinary life in the sense of making a difference, doing something meaningful. That was something that she was probably telling herself when she was still navigating this very new country, this very strange new life to her.
At the end of the day, this is something that should have never happened, and Ying Ying should still be here.
It's the last time you see pictures of all of the family together.
When that family was entering the house, he heard the gunshots.
911. Someone just shot our neighbors. Who shot them? We don't know.
There was a small gun safe. It had been pried open. Was this just a home invasion that went bad?
Sit there and think, what kind of relationship did they actually have?
This is not the all-American family that everybody might think they are.
In my opening statement, I told the jury panel, you're about to hear a tale of subterfuge, deception, and greed.
December 2003, Sugar Land, Texas. Kent and Tricia Whitaker and their two sons, Bart and Kevin, have called this affluent suburb home for more than a decade. It's a perfect fit for their upscale lifestyle.
Sugar Land was an amazing place to grow up. It was a community focused on faith, focused on friendships, relationships, a really tight-knit community. The Whitaker family was a pillar in the community. I attended a private school there in Sugar Land, and Kevin did too, and we were fast friends. The Whitaker family did so much together, whether it be fishing trips or camping trips, times on the lake. Kent and Tricia maintained that really sweet closeness with their kids and that high level of trust and communication. They love to experience life as a family.
I was the Whitakers' next door neighbor. They were very normal, kind, empathetic people. They seemed not troubled, unburdened. Life is good. That was my general vibe.
To friends and neighbors, the Whitakers seem to have it all. A happy family where 19-year-old Kevin looks up to his 23-year-old brother, Bart.
Kevin was very humble. He was a man of integrity, of character, incredibly honest. The guy was smart, very engaging. Bart was a little bit more quiet. You didn't know necessarily what he was thinking like you did Kevin.
Kent Whitaker is the co-owner of a thriving construction company. A hard worker, his financial success means he can provide his family with everything they might want. His wife, Tricia, is a dedicated part-time elementary school teacher.
She loved and knew every kid in every class every single year. And the interesting part was that she didn't have to work, right, because of Kent's job. But it told you a lot about her heart.
On December 10th, 2003, Kent and Tricia plan a special night out for the family to celebrate Bart's graduation from Sam Houston State University. At dinner, they present their son with a $4,000 Rolex watch as a graduation gift.
I know what a Rolex costs, and he bought a Rolex as a graduation gift. That's not an everyday thing.
Kent is a proud dad and takes photos so they'll have a permanent record of Bart's achievement.
I've seen this. I've seen those. Sitting there smiling like that. Very happy.
It's the last time you see pictures of all of the family together.
Someone just shot our neighbors. Who shot them? We don't know.
I was there when they died. That was real, and I can't necessarily make sense of what I saw that night. I was sitting at my computer. I heard gunshots. I immediately dart out the front door. I get about midway down our sidewalk, and I see Kent Whitaker laid on his back. You could see his body lit up by their front porch lights. And he was saying, Brandon, we've been shot. Call 911.
What kind of injuries do they have? I don't know. They've just been shot.
Brandon's father, Cliff Stanley, rushes to the house and discovers that Kent Whitaker has been shot in the chest.
My dad runs out and starts rendering aid. Multiple trips, back and forth with towels, just doing what we can. It felt awful. It was gruesome. It was a horror movie.
While police race to the scene, another 911 call comes from inside the Whitaker home. It's Bart Whitaker.
I've been shot. Where is your wound? In the arm, my shoulder. I think I can't move my arm. Okay, who else has been shot in the house with you? It's my mom and my dad and my brother. Oh, God, I can't. I need you to hang on, Bart. I've got help on the way, okay? Do you know who shot you? No. Dark in here. Okay, when he left, Bart, did he leave out your back door? Yeah, I chased him that way.
When I arrived on scene, it was very chaotic. There was ambulances, there were multiple police cars, fire trucks, a helicopter.
When detectives arrive at the Whitaker home, they find Kent Whitaker hanging on to life.
EMS personnel had went in. They had taken vitals for Kevin Whitaker, and he was pronounced deceased. Patricia Whitaker was flown by helicopter to a Houston hospital, and we were told she died en route to the hospital. Bart Whitaker had been shot. He was being medically treated by EMS. 2 people were shot. Another 2 people were dead. So we knew within the first hour that it was a double murder.
Kent Whitaker and his son Bart are rushed to a nearby hospital. Detectives quickly arrive to get a statement from Bart, since he is the only one conscious. Bart tells them that the family had just arrived home from their celebratory dinner when he realized he forgot something.
Bart Whitaker had reported that he had actually walked out to his truck to retrieve a cell phone. But when the rest of the family was entering the house, there was a guy that was inside that house. So he heard the gunshots. Bart reported he had chased the shooter through the home and out the back of the house. And he had actually been shot by the offender. We had had several home invasion robberies. So the thought initially was, are they connected? Was this just a home invasion that went bad?
But something doesn't quite add up.
Probably the biggest thing that stuck out to us was every drawer in the rooms were pulled out exactly even with each other.
So this burglar basically purposely, I'm going to pull out every drawer about this, so it'll make it look like I was trying to look for stuff. But you weren't looking for anything. You were just pulling out drawers. The officers immediately knew that.
To the investigators, the scene seems to have the hallmarks of a staged burglary. Nothing appears to have been stolen.
There were electronics, there were computers, there was TVs. There was a Rolex watch that was found. There didn't appear to be anything taken. So things didn't add up exactly to being some type of burglary.
Burglars come in and leave within minutes. They smash everything they can, pick up everything in 3 minutes. That's what happens. They don't sit there and wait for people to come home and walk in through the front door and shoot them. It just doesn't happen.
While investigators try to make sense of why the Whitakers were gunned down, they realize they have another pressing matter in front of them.
We had a vague description of a dark figure that ran up through the back of the house. And now this person is loose in the neighborhood. So are they on foot? Did they get picked up by a car? Did they drive a car there and now they've driven away? Or are they hiding in someone's backyard and they've already shot 4 people? The public's in danger, and we were in a very tough spot. Where is he? Or where could he be?
Police try to unravel a bewildering attack.
I crawled around for a bit. I really didn't know where I was hit. It just felt wrong.
And discover details of an inconceivable plot.
I was at the police station late one night, and there was a knock on the back door.
Do you have any idea who did the shooting?
Who did the shooting?
All the puzzle pieces just immediately connected, and realizing, gosh, the worst possible explanation for this is true.
As police in Sugar Land, Texas begin investigating the shooting at the Whitaker home, news travels fast in the tight-knit community.
I got a call from a friend. He's like, hey, there's been an incident, there's been a shooting. It was Kevin who had passed away, and Tricia had passed away as well. It was the most horrendous thing possible. And so at that moment, there's so much happening, you can't reconcile anything. You can't process, you can't grieve. It's just all hell's broken loose. December 10th, 2003 was a day that is burned in my memory.
I don't feel like I ever did process it. I just kind of did what I had to do and kept moving forward. It was just shocking. Sugar Land is incredibly safe. It's the kind of place where you don't even hesitate to take a walk at 3 a.m. They definitely made me more aware of my surroundings, of what's capable from people.
You know, the first question is what happened? What went down? And then why?
detectives are urgently pursuing those answers at the Whitaker home. As they search through the house, they find a weapon and 4 empty shell casings.
There was a gun that was found in the kitchen area, which was odd. It's probably the murder weapon. Usually we don't find that the offender leaves the murder weapon on the scene. But it was an advantage for us because now we had the possibility maybe for fingerprints, for DNA, for other types of evidence that could be recovered from this gun. In one of the upstairs rooms, nothing in that room appeared to be touched at all, except for there was a small gun safe. It had been pried open. You could see pry marks around the frame. It was empty.
The gun safe was a small little box, maybe a foot by foot, tucked into a hidden area. Whoever did this knew what to look for and knew what was in the safe.
The discovery leads the investigators to question how familiar the killer was with the Whitaker family and their home.
It was odd that someone had targeted this small gun safe out of this whole big house. Why weren't the computers disturbed? Why weren't the TVs taken? It just didn't make sense. So our job was to try to find out how many people were involved with this.
Most people are killed by people who know them. 78, 80%. It's very strange you have stranger on stranger. It just doesn't occur that much.
Three days after the murders, police are still scouring the evidence for leads on a motive or suspect when Bart Whitaker is discharged from the hospital. His father, Kent, is still in intensive care.
Not this way.
Despite the trauma he's just endured, Bart agrees to assist detectives by returning home to relive that terrifying night. The investigators hope he can remember something that will lead them to the killer.
It's 7:54 p.m. Officer DuBose is going to be playing the part of the suspect, and I'm turning it over to Bart for his direction of everyone.
We went through the crime, trying to figure out exactly what happened.
I was here when I was calling 911. I might have fallen forward. Okay. Right after I was shot. Okay. I crawled around for a bit. It felt... I really didn't know where I was hit. It just felt wrong. I mean, I couldn't move. My arm, I tried to push off the floor, and my arm wasn't working. I thought maybe I was hit in the side because it burned. So he went out the back door? Did you see him leave that back door? No. Okay. Yeah, I just don't remember.
They had him reenact the scene. And people generally, when it comes to crimes, they try to be very specific. Like he was standing here or something like that. And his was, well, I don't remember. It was this way or could have been this way.
When the shot was fired, did you see any flashes of light? I don't remember. You ever physically make contact with the suspect? I don't think so. Okay, I don't know what I was trying to do. I know I was just trying to grab it. I think I got to him.
He was very vague about things you think he would remember.
At that point, we had no leads. We had just a family of 4 that had been shot, 2 that were deceased.
They came home at the wrong time, in the wrong place. That's the story that you typically hear, right? That's the initial reaction. It's just incredibly unfortunate, right? How does this even occur in Sugar Land?
Detectives investigating the murders of Tricia Whitaker and her son Kevin in Sugar Land, Texas, believe their killer was familiar with the Whitaker home and may not have been trying to rob them.
So we started doing a background on the family. The domestic relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker was nothing but perfect that we could find out. And every friend or family that we had interviewed said they had a great relationship.
Detectives turned their focus on the Whitakers' murdered son, 19-year-old Kevin.
Was he targeted for some reason? Was he involved in something that he shouldn't have been? But he had no criminal history. As we were interviewing friends and family members, Kevin seemed to be a good kid, and he was a tragic victim.
Detectives also take a closer look at the other Whitaker son, 23-year-old Bart, who was wounded in the attack and is their primary witness. It was his graduation from college that was being celebrated shortly before the murders.
Bart was supposed to graduate that coming Saturday. So we contacted Sam Houston State University, and we were told he wasn't graduating. As a matter of fact, he was a freshman as far as their academic rating, and he had like a 1.4 GPA. So we had a story that he was giving us that wasn't matching reality.
He was lying about going to school for the past 3 years. And so they zeroed in on him.
It sure seemed at the time it was too coincidental that this big family event had occurred, and then they get home from this event and they're all shot. So was Bart involved with what had happened? Was he not involved? We had to gather evidence.
Investigators want to keep what they've learned about Bart Whitaker under wraps until they can either clear him or tie him to the murders. But a local newspaper covering the case has also learned of his deceit and runs the story. Bart's father, Kent, still recovering in the hospital, is stunned and can't understand why Bart would lie.
Kent's response to it was, why didn't he tell us this? I just wish he would have, let the music stop and confess this to us.
How could you not know your kid's not going to college? So you sit there and think, what kind of relationship did they actually have?
Six days after the murders of his mother and brother, Bart and his father joined more than 1,000 friends and family at the funeral.
Gosh, that was a brutal day. I remember seeing Kent and Bart sitting on the front row and watching them and, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? Just gutted for them and heartbroken for them.
We had multiple detectives that were there. We had actually had some recording devices that were placed around the area because there could be comments made. Because sometimes the parties involved go to the funerals, but we didn't find anything at all.
As the family mourns, Sugarland police continue to focus on the questions that have arisen about Bart.
We had discovered that Bart had some involvement with the criminal justice system already. We had found a 2001 incident report from the Waco Police Department that there was a female subject that was in an apartment with Bart Whitaker, and she overheard him talking about wanting to kill his dad. We had an officer that actually went out to the house. It was early in the morning and made contact with both Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker and told them why he was there. But they didn't believe Bart would be involved with something like that.
Later on, when the father finally talks, he says, we're just talking about the Menendez brothers. It wasn't anything serious at all. And so the father just believes him. And that's it.
In the days after the murders, life seems to return to some semblance of normalcy for Bart and his father, at least from the outside.
And they were still living in the same house together where two of their family members died, and the suspicion is growing that Bart was involved.
And it wasn't life as normal, but from the outside, it was a dad and a son who had gone through this tragic event, locking arms and leaning into one another.
We had to determine how much are we going to tell Mr. Whitaker, because his life still could be in jeopardy with Bart still being around. And we didn't tell him everything. We tried to be as honest as we could with him.
There were maybe a few times that Kent would say, hey, they're still trying to find the guy, or they're still looking into it.
Mr. Whitaker was in a very hard position at that point. Slowly, kind of the bow's starting to unravel here, where there's information about his only living son that, at least initially, isn't adding up.
Police know Bart Whitaker didn't pull the trigger, but they strongly suspect he is involved in the murders of his family.
Bart was very manipulative with friends, and that was information that we received as the investigation went on. That's when the intensity ramped up into trying to identify who does he currently hang around with and where were they at on December 10th of 2003. This is not the all-American family that everybody might think they are.
Detectives in Sugar Land, Texas suspect Bart Whitaker knows more than he's saying about the murders of his mother and brother, and in fact, may be involved in the crime. But they have been unable to find any solid evidence supporting their suspicions. Then, a week after the murders, as investigators contemplate their next move, an unexpected visitor drops by the police station.
The lead detective was at the police station late one night, and there was a knock on the back door. It was a gentleman by the name of Adam Hipp.
Adam Hipp tells the detective that he briefly went to college with Bart Whitaker, and he wants police to know that Bart's statement about killing his parents in 2001 was far from the joke he claimed it was.
He said, listen, Bart Whitaker talked to me about killing his family before, back in 2001.
Adam tells police that Bart claimed once his parents and brother were dead, he would receive all of the family's assets, including their home and life insurance policies worth over $1 million. He says Bart offered him a cut if he would be his trigger man.
The detective had Mr. Hipp actually draw a map that showed where he was supposed to stand inside the house, and he would shoot the family members as they walked in. And that's exactly what happened on December 10th, 2003. Adam Hipp started working for us. We had him make recorded phone calls with Bart Whitaker to get him to talk about the crime.
Detectives coach Adam to tell Bart he knows he killed his parents, and then threaten to go to the police with this information unless he receives $20,000.
And that's when Bart Whitaker says, yeah, I can pay you some money, basically.
Bart never really came out directly and said, I did it, but there were enough indicators there.
In my opinion, we had probable cause to arrest Bart Whitaker on basis of what we had with Adam Hipp coming in. We did have that. Did we have enough to prosecute him and convict him? No. We didn't have any details.
But Adam Hipp's call to Bart points the investigators to someone else who may be able to help them build their case.
When Adam Hipp is on the phone, Bart Whitaker mentions Chris Brashear. And what is Bart Whitaker? Chris is going to keep his mouth shut.
Adam tells police that Chris Brashear is a former roommate of Bart's. Detectives track down Chris and bring him in for questioning.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you coming down. Yeah, man.
After establishing the relationship between Bart and Chris, detectives hone in on the night of the murder.
Do you have any idea who did the shooting? Who did the shooting? Yeah, any ideas at all?
Man, I mean, it's a pretty gross incident to me. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, It's kind of a blunt question.
Has Bart ever approached you about killing his family?
Wow.
He's never talked to you about that or anything like that?
No.
Never even joked around about
No.
it? So, did you go anywhere that night?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
Went to what's that place? Hooters?
Hooters?
Yeah, that's right.
And it was you and Steven?
It was Steven, his girlfriend, and myself. Yeah.
Investigators believe that Chris Brashear is lying to them. They learn that Steven is Steve Champagne, another former roommate of Bart's. And if Chris is providing Steve as a false alibi, detectives consider whether he might be involved as well.
Steve Champagne is enlisted in the Marines. We're looking at cell phone records, financial records. So who is communicating with who?
Police quickly locate Steve and bring him in for questioning.
Now, they say they don't know anything about it. They denied anything. So at least that's where they start.
Finally, as pressure grows, the story begins to change.
I think Steve Champagne, his conscience finally got to him. Then he let out a little information about when maybe I was involved.
Do you feel partly responsible?
Oh, yeah.
Stephen Champagne changed his story and confessed.
Steve tells the detectives that Bart convinced him and Chris Brashear to join a plot to kill his family, so he could inherit his parents' fortune. Steve admits he was the getaway driver, and Chris Brashear was the trigger man.
He had taken Chris Brashear over to the house, parked his car a street or two over behind the house. Chris hid inside the house and shot the family members as they walked in on December 10th of 2003.
Did Chris say where he found the gun in the house?
No, I remember hearing something about a safe or something like that, but I don't know for sure.
Who do you think is the most responsible?
Probably Chris for shooting him. I mean, Bart planning it, yeah.
The big piece of information, evidence-wise, that Steve was able to provide to us is they had a bag that had a lot of evidence from the crime, walkie-talkies, water bottle, ammunition, that they tossed into Lake Conroe.
This is a big lake, man-made lake. They throw that in there. Now, what would be the odds of somebody being able to find that?
Steve Champagne, a suspect in the murders of Tricia and Kevin Whitaker, claims a bag full of crucial evidence was tossed into Lake Conroe, 50 miles north of Houston, and agrees to take police to the spot.
The police department with their scuba tank, they go out and look for it. In water, you can't see your hand in front of you. They found the damn thing.
Inside the bag, detectives find the tool used to break into the Whitakers' gun safe.
They even found the pry bar, and they managed to match it up by the scrape marks. They even found the cell phone they were using. Now, you tell me what kind of police work that is. God bless.
There was DNA that was recovered. That was Chris Brashear's from a water bottle. There was ammunition that was consistent with the ammunition that was involved that killed the family. Tangible physical evidence that links these individuals to this crime.
With the evidence now in hand, detectives have what they need to confront Bart. But he's nowhere to be found.
Bart Whitaker's Tahoe was found abandoned in an apartment complex in Houston. Both of the doors were found open. We sent detectives to the scene. We believe he's on the run.
We just lost him. People don't run when they're innocent. They really don't. Flight is a very good indication of guilt.
Kent Whitaker told us that there was money that was taken from the house. So Bart had some money to survive. Our job was now to figure out where he was.
The news of Bart's disappearance is one more shock for his friends and family, already devastated by the murders.
That was the big kind of aha moment, was when Bart left. So that's really when everything, all the puzzle pieces just immediately connected. And I realized, gosh, the worst possible explanation for this is true.
It's too much to really break it down into a coherent single thought. Shock, disgust, and disbelief almost. That someone could plot and plan out something like this.
Police send out a nationwide alert to be on the lookout for Bart Whitaker. With the cash taken from his home, he could be anywhere. Meanwhile, Steve Champagne and Chris Brashear are charged with first-degree murder for the deaths of Tricia and Kevin Whitaker.
These were kids that came from great backgrounds, but were manipulated by Bart Whitaker to kill his family. And they went along with it because Bart had promised them a cut in his inheritance. And he had told them that, hey, it's going to take a little while, but I am going to give you some money.
For months, there are no leads to Bart's whereabouts.
So we worked with Crime Stoppers to put out that we were looking for the whereabouts of Bart Whitaker.
There's a Crime Stoppers award of $10,000. If you get information that leads to this arrest, we'll pay you $10,000.
18 months after the murders, police get a call from a man named Rudy Rios.
Rudy Rios said that he had known Bart Whitaker and he knew where Bart Whitaker was because Bart Whitaker had assumed his identity and he went to Mexico.
Rudy Rios claims Bart paid him $3,000 to be transported to Mexico, and that Bart has been living there for more than a year.
Bart Whitaker shacks up with a female and begins a relationship with her.
Mexican officials agree to cooperate with American law enforcement. Almost 2 years after the murders, they track Bart down, and on September 24th, 2005, he is returned to the U.S.
We call up Kent Whitaker and said that he's going to be getting out of Mexico, but there was no deals made whatsoever. They just got him out. Put him back here and put him in jail. We had already made a decision. The only person we were seeking the death penalty was the mastermind, Bart Whitaker.
But Bart's defense attorneys work to thwart the possibility of a death sentence. At the heart of their strategy is Kent Whitaker.
Mr. Whitaker did not want the state of Texas to put his son to death, which is usually just kind of a reverse of roles where the family wants the maximum.
To forgive somebody of doing the most horrendous thing possible serves as a model of forgiveness. Something I think about all the time.
His standard was, I believe he's changed, and I'm going to forgive him. My standard is, he hasn't changed, and you can't forgive him.
All rise.
Bart Whitaker's capital murder trial begins on March 3rd, 2007, some 3.5 years since the killings at his family's home.
In my opening statement, I told the jury panel, you're about to hear a tale of subterfuge, deception, and greed, which will lead you to one conclusion, that Bart Whitaker had his family murdered. And that's the only conclusion he got.
Prosecutors put admitted getaway driver Steve Champagne on the stand. He explains how Bart outlined his murder for cash scheme.
The conversation was about when the family came back from eating dinner and Chris would be in the house and shoot them.
The The jury hears that Bart staged a fight with the gunman, and they'd agreed in advance Bart would be shot in the arm to divert suspicion. The trial lasts 6 days before the case goes to the jury on March 8, 2007. They deliberate for just an hour and a half before coming to a unanimous decision.
The guilty verdict was very quick.
Now the jury must decide whether Bart Whitaker should live or die.
Call your next witness. Bart Whitaker. He needs to be sworn, Your Honor.
Bart didn't testify during his trial, but now, in the penalty phase, makes a last-ditch effort to save his life.
Please stand before the clerk and be sworn.
Bart Whitaker has been convicted of murdering his mother and brother. Now he's trying to convince the jury not to sentence him to death.
When Bart Whitaker was testifying, I actually had the defendant admit that he had no reason to hate his parents, but he did it anyway.
The only people I've ever hated, and I know it was not for the right reasons, but the only people I ever hated were my parents and my brother.
The prosecutor confronts Bart with his family's final moments, the photos taken by his father at the celebration for Bart's supposed graduation. He tells the jury one photo from that night is particularly disturbing.
He shoots a finger at him while he's doing it. Now, some people don't make that much of it. I'm sitting there going, you understand something? He's shooting a finger at him knowing they're going to be dead. It's very chilling.
The jury deliberates for 10 hours before sentencing Bart Whitaker to death.
It's a hard question, and people have a lot of opinions about it because they're removed from it. But when you know the people and you've been involved with them, and definitely as intimately involved with this entire murder as I was, you see things a little different. Because I believe Bart should have received the death penalty.
Bart's accomplices agree to plea deals. Triggerman Chris Brashear is sentenced to life behind bars, and Steve Champagne, the getaway driver, receives a lighter 15-year sentence for cooperating as a key witness.
How do you even begin to broach that conversation with someone? Like, there's no icebreaker for, hey, will you help me kill my family? It's brought me to the conclusion that evil is real, very tangible, and it has a long plan behind it, and I truly think Bart was evil.
Over the next decade, Kent Whitaker remarries and builds a new life. He continues to fight to get his son's death sentence commuted.
Ken Whitaker never said he was okay with what Bart did. He always said he should be punished, okay? But he didn't like us seeking the death penalty. That was it.
When Bart's appeals are exhausted, his execution is scheduled for 6 p.m. on February 22nd, 2018. Then, with just 30 minutes until Bart is set to die, Texas Governor Greg Abbott grants him clemency.
And left, and I found on the news that they commuted his life.
I'll never forget the night that the news came out. I never forget that moment of seeing Kent break down. Man, it was over a decade of emotions. For me, I was on the side of commuting the sentence. Should he ever see the light of day? Absolutely not. That's a no-brainer.
One day, Kent's going to die. And Bart will have no one left fighting for him, talking to him, coming to see him. And he'll have to live the rest of his life suffering like that. So I think he would have gotten off easy with the death penalty in this regard.
Trisha was gold. I find myself getting emotional thinking back to her. She cared for us. She loved us. She was invested in our lives. I miss Trisha dearly. I'm gutted that Kevin is gone. You know, Kevin was not a typical 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old, right? He wasn't a typical high schooler. He was always wiser than us. There was something in the yearbook our senior year. It was most likely to succeed, most athletic. His was who was the best, most humble, highest integrity human being, and it was Kevin. I started thinking about where would Kevin be now? I think that's what I still probably grieve, is not having that friendship for life.